Hey there everyone, my name is Peter Dang. I am a second year dental student here at Roseman University College of Dental Medicine, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch our presentation on student engagement and comprehension outcomes using tactile and virtual learning. The other people associated with this project is Teresa, who is a first year dental student here at Roseman, and she will also be presenting along with me later on the presentation. We also have Dr. Man Hung, who is the Associate Dean for Research and Core Director here at Roseman, and Dr. David McMillan, who is the Assistant Professor here at Roseman. The purpose of this study was to compare the difference between utilizing a physical tooth model and a virtual image of a tooth in a dental histology learning activity, and to determine how they influence first-year dental students' engagement and comprehension. The way this study was conducted was by taking 100 first-year dental students and dividing them into teams of 5. Those 20 teams were then divided into 2 different groups. Teams 1 through 10 were in Group A, while teams 11 through 20 were in Group B. We had each group participate in 2 different learning activities. The first activity is the enamel histology activity. Teams in Group A were given 5 physical human tooth models that were first sterilized and then embedded in clear acrylic. Teams in Group B was given access to only online images of human teeth that were first sterilized and also embedded in clear acrylic. Both groups were given access to online enamel slide presentation and worksheet with open-ended questions on enamel histology. Those worksheets consist of open-ended questions asked students to describe what they saw regarding enamel rods, line of retzius, pericomata, enamel lamina, enamel spindles, narrow enamel, and aprismatic enamel using their tooth models or images, depending on which group they were in. The worksheet also asked students to define each of the structures conceptually, which they learned from the PowerPoint. The second learning activity was the dentin histology activity. Teams in Group A were given access to 5 images of human tooth models that were first sterilized and embedded in clear acrylic, while teams in Group B were given access to 5 physical human tooth models that were first sterilized and embedded in clear acrylic. Both groups were given access to an online dentin slide-in presentation and a worksheet with open-ended questions on dentin histology. Those open-ended questions asked the students what they saw regarding the mantle, the circumpulpal, primary, secondary, and tertiary dentin, lines of von Ebner, sclerotic dentin, and dentinal tubules. In this slide, the top row represents the images that the groups had access to depending on which activity they participated in, while the bottom row represents the physical tooth model that students could actually pick up and manipulate in their hands, depending on which activity they participated in. Following both the enamel and dentin histology learning exercises, each student individually took a 9-question formative assessment on the concepts that they learned regarding enamel and dentin histology. Students were also given a survey regarding their engagement level and their perception about learning with a physical tooth model versus a virtual image. Data collected from student surveys and the formative assessment compare the engagement and comprehension of students using the tooth images versus the physical tooth models. Looking at the data, we found that respondents indicated that there was no significant difference in student engagement levels between the actual tooth model group and the virtual image group for the first breakout and the second breakout sessions. We also found that there was no significant difference in learning comprehensions between the physical tooth model group and the virtual image group in the enamel assessment and in the dentin assessment. Now I want to shift it over to my colleague Teresa Vu.
Peter, that was great. And now it's my turn, Teresa, the D1 student involved in the study, to present the second half of the presentation. So the results were really interesting. It turned out that there was no significant difference in student engagement levels between the group that had the actual tooth model and the group that only had the virtual image. Furthermore, there was no significant difference in student comprehension in the group that had the actual tooth model and the group with the virtual image, which suggests that how engaged a student is, how interested, how focused, how involved they are in the lesson material, doesn't really change in having a physical, tangible model that they can observe. It does make a small difference. It does increase realness and does create a kind of clinical relevance, but it doesn't do so much more than a virtual image could. At least, just not a big enough degree where it actually counts. In fact, most students we asked said that there was little to no advantage in having a tangible tooth model versus a virtual image when discussing and having meaningful conversations with their colleagues over the topic. Now, this could also be because the tooth models are pretty small and only one person can view them at a time, which could impact group discussion. The virtual images can be projected over a big screen and can facilitate group discussions a lot easier. And that might also be why students prefer the virtual image over the tooth model in general, even though that they're dental students, and you would think having a physical model would be more beneficial since their careers are going to be very tactilely influenced. Especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and just the overall age of Zoom/YouTube/ just any virtual learning really, our study suggests that there is potential for educational resources. That's great for students, right? Looking at a candle online will basically give you the same impact as holding a candle in person. But it's also great for administrators and people who are overall in charge of creating curriculum, because logistically, buying these physical models, they're expensive. They're a lot more expensive than creating a PowerPoint. A student's learning is the most important thing, and we should do all means necessary to make sure that a student actively engages with the material and understands it. But our study shows that, hey, looking at a picture online, they're not losing much out of it. Our study suggests that objects, while good in some cases, it might not always be the answer. I hope you found this presentation to be engaging, and on behalf of me, Peter, Dr. McMillan, and Dr. Hung, we thank you for your time.